Um, Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all join us for this session of Ecosystem Engage, the Not So Daily Show. I'm joined today by Laurent Philonenko, who is currently the CEO of Servion, a very high-growth, disruptive provider of contact center and collaboration technology. And before I get into the background of Laurent, which is very relevant to this theme, I also wanted to take the opportunity to welcome and introduce Audrey William. She is definitely the best known analyst face in the Asia Pacific region when it comes to unified communications, collaboration, and contact center. I would like to take a shot at being a globally recognized thought leader. So thank you, Laurent. Thank you, Audrey. For those of you not familiar with Laurent is a true technologist. He's held senior leadership roles driving the UC and collaboration business for some of the other biggest names in the industry, including Cisco and Avaya. So Laurent, welcome, and we're really looking forward to having a great conversation with you.
No, thanks for having me.
So before we talk about the technology prowess that you have and all the cool stuff you've been doing at work, I understand from Audrey that you're a bit of a surfer dude, Laurent.
Yeah, I like to do all kind of things. Surfing it's a great sport. It's very absorbing.
I also understand, apart from what you do in your professional life as a high flyer, you're also a very keen pilot. And fair to say that at the moment, you're probably not getting either of those hobbies, flying or surfing as a sport at the moment in the current climate.
Yeah, true. And flying, it's about rigor. You need to, you cannot cut corners. And that's the same like in business. It's you have to be super rigorous, and if things don't look right, they are not right.
And look, just talking about the current context, I mean, these are difficult times for everyone. Yeah. And one of the things, Laurent, that I maintain in all my conversations is, there's a lot of talk about an economic crisis, and my view on this is, well, it's not really an economic crisis. The economic crisis is really a fallout of what's foremost a humanitarian crisis, right? And what that means is that people are getting impacted everywhere. But I think one of the biggest things, obviously, is the human spirit is about resilience, and resilience gets a lot easier when people stick together. So with the impact on people, especially for organizations like yours, you would have employees spread across the world. I mean, how are you as an organization dealing with that whole challenge of employee engagement and motivating people and as they work remotely?
Yeah. So first of all, I will agree with you. It's a humanitarian crisis on many levels. Very difficult situation for many people, that is going to leave consequences on society, people, economy. So we'll see what happens. All of a sudden, a lot of people became biostatisticians overnight. So you have a lot of predictions about what is going to happen or not. Let's not go there, but let's simply say the magnitude of what is happening is, people talk about black swan or unfathomable event, and that is probably right. We were not prepared. I don't think any one of us was prepared for such a disruption, and the uncertainty and I would consider myself privileged to have a job and be talking to you today. A lot of people have much bigger problems to worry about, every single day. So the proportion of what's happening, it's mind-boggling, frankly.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, so we know when you come to our employees, first of all, everybody's working remote, and so that in itself was not an operational disruption. We were prepared, and so we could, when we saw that things were starting to unravel, so to speak, we took the decision before it became a mandate from the authorities to ask everybody to work from home. So that went very smoothly, even though for many people it's not as simple as it could be. People have families, people have kids, people have surroundings which are not propitious to having calls with customers, whether it is noise or the physical setting or things of that nature. So I appreciate our employees being patient and doing their job, sometimes in difficult conditions for themselves, and then we are in some respects a large organization, so it's impossible to see or to know the circumstances of every single employee. So some of them have family issues which are worrisome, and so it's difficult for them to have their mind applied to their job all the time. But they do a remarkable job to surmount those obstacles. So I am very, very thankful for them and for the spirit that they display.
Yeah.
The one thing that as a leader, when that happens, is you need to, in any distributed organization, it's about communications, communicate. And hopefully you cannot be a kind of unconscious cheerleader. You need to acknowledge the situation, need to acknowledge what's going on, but help people still feel connected. That's what the management role has to be these days. Feel that make people feel included, give them opportunities to engage, not just on deliverables, but also on dialogue and these kind of things. So it's absolutely very, very important to communicate. And obviously, with the tools we have these days, it's easier than it would have been a while ago.
Yeah. Right. So with that, probably to start off with, from an industry standpoint, just a question for Audrey. Now, we know that in the contact center space in general, there are issues, and from a technology standpoint, that go deeper because lack of devices they can use. They still, I think, contact centers is one of the places where you still find desktops, right? So, so fundamentally, it's been a little bit restricted to that particular location. But we're seeing that shift in this environment. I mean, Audrey, from your perspective, I mean, are you seeing this shift towards working remotely for contact center workers in this industry as a more permanent thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Amit. I think you hit on some really good points, and I think and Laurent spoke about that as well. And that is, we never expected the scale of what we're seeing now. I think it's just hit the industry in a really big way. And I think the contact centers have had to almost overnight move all their agents to the home, whether it's the in-house contact centers or the outsourcers. And, I think initially, when you talk about moving employees to the home, there are challenges, obviously, when it comes to collaboration or video or security. But when you move agents to the home, it can be quite complex because of some of the SLAs you might have with, your current clients. They'll ask you, how are you treating data privacy? How are you treating that private customer confidential information that the agents are collecting from home? How are you going about addressing compliance issues? Because compliance is a very big part of the contact center. Now that my 1,000 agents are now working individually at home, what does that mean from a training and coaching perspective? And again, that's a very big part of the contact center. So I think when you look at all of this, and I think I guess the other big one is with that whole high meltdown that we've seen in weeks that contact centers have gone through, and that high inbound activity, you all of a sudden have to get the agents up and running right away. And so what I've seen is that high acceleration of cloud contact center adoption. Because, you know, if you want to get agents up and running right away, you want to change IVR scripts, which are quite common now. Quite often you want to change call workflows. The cloud model makes it really easy. So you can imagine you're dealing with the inbound activity and that meltdown, but at the same time, you want to make sure that the customers don't see that, your customers. You want to keep it running smoothly. Yeah. So because of that, now that it's tried and tested, to your question, Amit, I think we're going to probably see a lot of brands actually make agents work from home permanently. And this model is actually here to stay. And we're going to see a lot of, I guess, models being piloted where 50% might be in the office, 50% at home. But yeah, I think it's very interesting times ahead.
Thank you. And Laurent, obviously, you know, you and your company, you're at the coal face of this industry. And from your standpoint, are you seeing the repercussions of this? I know you're a big proponent of cloud-based contact centers, but has this just resulted in significant requests from your customers to migrate and move quickly?
Yes, definitely. You know, first of all, I will totally second what Audrey was saying. I think it's, you know, if you look at the physical setup of contact centers in many places, how do you bring agents back and comply with social distancing? That's physically nearly impossible. So, so something will have to happen there. You know, either contact centers will have to expand their facilities, or they will have to have less people in the existing facilities. Number one. Number two, yes, we saw a lot of demand from customers saying, hey, you know, we need to evacuate our offices, so we need to have people working from home. So help us do that. And so we helped quite a number of customers set up their environment, the applications, the remote agent, mobile agent configuration, and all that. So and that went pretty smoothly. It's for the ones who have recent technology, that is quite feasible. Whether you're on-prem or in the cloud, it's not hard to do at all. However, if you have an old technology which doesn't support those use cases, then it's very different. Then you have to go through the on-prem upgrade cycle very quickly with all that entails, or you have the cloud temptation to say, okay, I'm going to move to cloud right now because I don't have a choice. So we have seen that, but by and large, we've been very successful in helping customers, set up their work operation from home. Now, like Audrey was saying, there are environmental constraints, like you cannot control the environment of the agent. You cannot control the agent taking a picture of a screen at home. Mm-hmm. You can do that in a contact center, but you cannot do that at home. So that forces our customers to look at their application and make sure they respect their compliance obligations and the like. So that is, if you will, the second wave of work. So first, establish the connectivity, physical setup, everything works, and now, okay, how do we make sure that we have good security? Then workforce management becomes another question as well. Are the shifts of people at home the same as the shifts of people having to commute and go to a contact center or to an office? Not necessarily. So people have different needs because they have kids at home and all that. So workforce management becomes more important. Supervisors don't have any physical contact now with their agents, so they cannot go and sit with somebody, listen to a call, etc., which they do all the time. So now, they need to barge in remotely, and so tools to allow them to communicate with agents and doing more analysis of recordings become more important. That's the only way to understand what's really going on and the quality for the end customer. And like Audrey was saying, we've seen many customers with many more phone calls. And actually, it's interesting, but the people are using their phone line again, even the PSTN, not just when they have it, not just necessarily the cell phone. People are using their phones to call again. So net the inbound volume is going up. So people have longer wait times. So when they get to an agent, they probably are not in a very good sentiment already. So if the quality of the call is bad, then it compounds that sort of anxiety that people have and why they are calling. So which is why I believe smart call deflection strategies are going to be very important. First, customers, okay, let's survive the next few weeks. Let's put the conditions for people to work at home. Then, okay, let's optimize the environment, and then, okay, what do we do next? So that's not necessarily for right now, but probably 2-3 months from now, people are going to our customers are going to think, how do I do that better? Interestingly, I was looking at the website of an airline, and their call volumes have gone through the roof. They say don't call if your flight is more than 72 hours from now, and there is a chatbot, and so you start with a chatbot dialogue, and at some point the chatbot says, "I'm sorry, I don't have the answer. I'm still learning," which I think was a fairly smart way of saying, it's not that simple, but we want to help. And sorry, we don't have the automated answer, but at least it makes you feel like the user experience has been taken into account, and people care, and it's going to get better.
I think in the current context, it must be really hard for contact center providers, whether they're outsourced or inbound, because they have to gear up to respond and react immediately. They don't have the time to pivot and change. They have to just go with the flow. And there must be so much in terms of making technology provisions, retraining their teams as well. So yeah, I mean, I think
I think Laurent mentioned a good point there. To your point, Amit, and that is, whilst they're dealing with that meltdown and just going through, that challenges they're facing with that inbound activity, the environment has changed now. It's like, how can the agent go up and talk to the supervisor? He can't physically meet him now.
Yeah.
Or how can the supervisor now look at the floor and say, those are my 50, 100 agents in this space. I'm going to walk up to that agent now and tap him on the shoulder and say, you need to take this call now because you're the specialist, or something like that. So now that whole connection is lost, and that's why video and collaboration tools will become important. So that's sort of like what they're thinking through also right now.
Yeah. So talking about collaboration, one of the challenges, Audrey, that I've come across from a contact center perspective, when I've read some of the research, especially some of the research you've published as well, there seems to be a disconnect and lack of alignment often between sales and marketing and the customer service teams, right? And that needs to be resolved very quickly, right? Because obviously, one is the tools you have to provide better customer experience, but then the other element is actually enabling people and creating that level of collaboration that's productive collaboration, right? I mean, how can, what's your advice on how businesses can achieve this, Audrey?
Yeah, sure. I think this whole notion of driving customer experience, it's a very complex one. And I think for many years, in my 18 years as an analyst, I think I've always heard this, that, the sales and marketing teams, they don't necessarily talk to the contact center teams. And it's been, improving in recent times, but it's that disconnect that's making it really hard for companies to call, to actually have a proper experience. And to give you an example, it might be something that, let's say, marketing is driving, they're driving a campaign, they're working on that with sales. So they're pushing this out at their stores, they're sending brochures out, they're connecting with customers on email. But sometimes that message, that same message and that same group of customer, if that customer calls the contact center and happens to mention some of this, sometimes the agent might be confused, or the agent might ask the customer to repeat yourself about the problem. So I think the industry has been grappling with this whole disconnect around CX, because everybody loves talking about driving great customer experience. But I think the worlds have to collide. The worlds have to get closer between sales, marketing, and also customer service. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think data and understanding data, customer journey analytics is going to be very big. In fact, I think that's going to be the next big thing. A lot of companies have been very reactive in the past. They haven't been proactive to really say, like, hey, you know what? I know that you've been facing this problem for the last 12 months. You've been going to this particular destination. You know what? I can actually call you now beforehand to let you know that this has happened. So I think this whole space of customer experience management, customer journey analytics is really something that is going to be big, because the disconnect is still there.
So Laurent, thank you, Audrey. Laurent, you've been, I think it's fair to say that you've probably been across most of the major contact centers globally, given the roles you've played in the last 2 decades, leading 3 of the top vendors in that space, and now what you're doing at Servion. I mean, have you seen that over the years, and have you seen that improve? Is that, or does it need a major shift in approach?
I completely agree with Audrey. It's intellectually what you would say is, there should be just one data set about the customer. Reality is, you have the sales data set, then you have the marketing data set. So there is a reason why the sales automation leaders, Salesforce, Oracle, both marketing automation companies. So let's say you have a reasonable integration between marketing and sales at this point. And then post-sales, it's a different database, because it's different use cases. So it's about support tickets and or RMAs or things like that. And so the process becomes disjointed. And like Audrey was saying, somebody could be calling, having received an email campaign, and the agent wouldn't know. Or you would send an email campaign to a customer with having support issues. That's not good either. And so that's why you have the emergence of what's called customer data platforms. And the problem for most companies is extracting data and harmonizing data. It's time consuming, and it takes willingness from several parties and several budgets, more importantly perhaps, to work together. So the marketing guys, they don't necessarily have an understanding of the voice world. The voice guys, they tend to look at the contact center as an engine in and of itself, and they keep it running. They do their weekly reports, and they are very focused on their SLAs. And in fact, what needs to happen is a junction of both, and that is in practice fairly difficult to do. So it's not so much a technology problem. I think technology exists to do that. As a matter of fact, we have some integrations today where you can achieve that. The problem is getting to the right data customer by customer. There is tools which facilitate that, but it has to be a joint top-down decision at the company level. My belief is unless you have a very strong leadership mandate for a digital transformation, you will not do that because you will still be fragmented and you will not have the will and resources to lay out really what is a customer and everybody to abide by it and contribute its data end to end.
So it requires a whole sort of shift around the mapping the customer journey and planning that. Just while we're talking about customer experience, there is one technology aspect that bothers me, and it's this whole IVR experience, right? I call my bank or my telco, and it's like, first of all, they're all inconsistent. Some of them don't even go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They just start with 7, press 7 for this, and you lose track of that, and then you go back to the start. We know that we're seeing with the experience that you get with the likes of Siri and Alexa, right? Why can't we have that sort of an experience when we call our contact center? Just for it would be so refreshing.
That's coming. That is coming. Technology has made a lot of progress on that front. We are seeing customers now embracing that concept of guided dialogues. Alexa. In fact, it's almost a personal IVR. It's a multi-service personal IVR. But if you look at what's behind Alexa, it's how you construct dialogues. So it's not necessarily very different.
Yeah.
But it has a nice interface. And the interesting thing with Alexa, it's usable by anyone. And even people who are not technology freaks would use Alexa. That's why you have so many of those devices and applications out there. So we are going to see a lot of change on the IVR. I believe. I think it still makes sense to have a front end to process calls without agents. But that front end is going to change. It's going to become more conversational. It's going to be more intelligent. We are not going to have a kind of human-like conversation between somebody and a robot anytime soon. But it's a lot of progress has been made, and it's now possible to do an 80-20 solution much quicker than before at a much lower cost.
Audrey, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Laurent mentioned some really good points, and Amit, to your point about that frustration with the IVR, I have that same frustration. So I think millions of customers around the world, but I think the next big thing is going to be conversational AI, and I'm starting to see some very good deployments here in Australia and Asia where you go in and you have that discussion for let's say a home loan application. Yeah. The machine has become so smart that they've understood about 600 or 800 or thousands of permutations that you're possibly going to be asked about, from your tax residency right down to your income, to the variable rate, the fixed rate, and they make it so conversational like that you feel like you're actually talking to a very intelligent engine. And I think there are some really good deployments out there, but I think as Laurent mentioned, a very good point is that human touch is still very important. So I think the successful companies that deploy this will use this, but the moment the customer gets stuck and they go like, hey, I'm really keen now to pursue this. I want to speak to a loan consultant. There should be a seamless handoff from the conversational AI engine to a live agent. I think that is very important. If you don't do that, you've almost lost the customer experience.
Yeah.
And potentially a new customer for the bank.
Yeah, no, I agree. So there's a lot I learned about you, Laurent, as I started researching your background. And I think it's fair to say, and I have to put it out there, I think it's fair to say, given your experience and the exposure you have in, arguably 3 of the leading vendors of contact center technology, having led these businesses, I think it would be hard to find someone with that level of experience and expertise and all the ups and downs and the learnings you've had as well along the way. So I guess, as a seasoned business leader, as a technologist, Laurent, and if I take the analogy of your personal life into your professional life, in your personal life, you like to ride the waves. In your professional life, you like to create waves, I imagine. Being a recreational pilot, you're also a bit of a high flyer in your personal life and your professional life. Sorry, I had to put those in there. But given that you've been at the forefront of making these shifts in the industry, I mean, what is the impact of technology that you're seeing in general? If you had to leave our viewers with, 2 or 3 key sort of takeaways.
First of all, thank you for the flattering comments. But the role of technology is to simplify the user experience and to be less intrusive. So, the notion is it should be easy to get what you want. Yeah. Why would you need to go to some special place to get what you want? Why cannot you use your phone with WhatsApp or Line or WeChat and do everything from there? So, and today tools have made incredible progress to be able to create those much more seamless experiences than before. So it doesn't replace, in some cases, humans, but at least a lot of things can be done in a much simpler fashion. And I think that is really what's been happening on the consumer side of things in the last few years. And contact centers are very complex, and they take time to adopt technology. You have regulations and all those things, but they are going to go there as well. The experience is going to be much more natural in many ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Any last words you want to get in, Audrey?
I think the one thing is you drive customer experience by listening to your customers, listening to them very closely. And that means that from a technology standpoint, I think even when you look at metrics like average handle time and first call resolution, I think, those metrics are all good, but I think the application of AI will come in a big way to aid those metrics. And that's where sentiment analysis becomes important. Listening to the customer, and it's not just about taking part in a survey to say, hey, I've ticked the 4 boxes and therefore I'm happy, or this is the NPS that I have to go through. I think it's about really now understanding, like, hey, I know you were frustrated on that call. I know you were really happy, or I felt like someone needed to call you, or there's an opportunity for a sales outcome. So I think sentiment analysis is going to play a very big part in customer experience.
No, fantastic. Good thoughts to leave us with. I want to thank you, Laurent and Audrey. So thank you for that. I hope and pray that humanity gets through this adversity as quickly as possible. But in the meanwhile, stay well, stay safe, and as far as possible, stay at home.